The whole weekend busts in some seriously hot sunshine, and as we entered through the security gates on Friday, we immediately felt at home as the checks were done with huge smiles and laughs. This is very much a family affair, with those working at the festival local Oxfordshire people who have attended Cornbury Music Festival for years. Generous parking, huge spaces for tents to be pitched along with gazebos, shelters and windbreaks to make your group space that little bit more substantial. The event is nicknamed Posh Stock, and a place that the well-to-do come to let their hair down at their annual country jamboree, but without any fruit and vegetable growing competitions, a tombola supplied by the local church groups. Glenn Matlock not trying hairy bikers posh nosh John Hayhurst. However, as an addition to the music and similar to other regional festivals, there is a celebrity chef experience, but rather than having Jamie Oliver or Rick Stein, Cornbury have imported from the north those hairy bikers who are putting on a three-course spread, several times a day at £55 a head, northern food at southern prices. Zucchero performs later in the day. John Hayhurst. Elsewhere we found the food options to be very plentiful and not as expensive as we imagined. A standard main course is at around £8 each, and a multitude of choice from quality vegetarian options to those dirty burgers of fish and chips. A couple of my personal favourites were here, paellaria and Goan fish curries, the latter I'd only found at Glastonbury, so Cornbury certainly attracts the best in food suppliers. For general water, there was a fantastic idea from Frank Water where you paid a standard price for a wristband bottle and could get refill after refill of ice-cold water throughout the day, saving on using any nasty plastic bottles. Stereo MCS John Hayhurst. There's a kids area, with much of the activities completely free, a vintage cinema, circus and a curious small tent hosted by radio station Jack FM. This became acoustic session area during the day, and then kids, adults disco at night. A big wheel, loads of rides and stalls made this event just crammed with things to do and see, and all of it very walkable and manageable for even smaller children, but experienced parents brought AEY for those later evening strolls. Cornbury Festival's wigs John Hayhurst. Anyway, enough of the preamble. What about the music? Well, the lineup admittedly wasn't as great as last year's, but last year was supposed to be the last ever Cornbury Festival. Director Hugh Fillamore jokingly called the audience a load of bullies as they nagged him to return the festival to the Great Chew Estate once again. Whilst his bank manager may have a different view, he confirmed the festival will be back again in 2019, hopefully with a bigger and better lineup, but for this year we had UB40, Alanis Morissette and Squeeze as our main headliners. Alanis Morissette. John Hayhurst. Let's admit from the start, this is very much a BBC Radio 2 audience, middle-of-the-road acts, none that would prompt a crowd surfer would be considered at the cutting edge of new music, and therefore the punters match that specification. I would imagine the average age is around 45, and a normal festival attendee 16 to 25 age group will find this place a little too placid, and I would advise them to save their student pennies for Reading later in the year. Consequently though, there is absolutely no trouble anywhere. It feels incredibly safe and friendly. The only rush is to get your camping chairs in a good spot for the main stage, in a mild frenzy stereotypically perfected by German tourists with towels in Spain. Families rush to their spot at 9 a.m., plop the chairs and a picnic blanket down and then head off to breakfast at Café Nero. The sensible ones actually headed for the shade, which was only really found underneath the trees. Joe Slater. John Hayhurst. Café Nero sponsored a fantastic stage at the festival, and as well as having all their coffee and food on offer, co-founder Pablo Ettinger introduced a range of artists onto the stage over the weekend. Some were individual acoustic artists such as Scouse youngster Joe Slater, who has returned to the festival for a second year and packed the tent again, but also bands like Key West managed to fit in as well, to play some of their stirring anthemic Irish folk rock from their new album True North. The heat in the place was a little unrelenting though, and despite trying to get some air flowing through, it was a bit of a sweatbox. My daughter Amy saw her highlight of the whole weekend here, and Joe Slater is now a regular feature on her Spotify playlist. She even managed to get a signed copy of his last EP after the show. Lucas Nelson. John Hayhurst. The beauty of such a small festival is that you are able to wander around and catch a few songs from many different artists during the day, coming away from the festival with lots of new favorites. Willie Nelson's son Lucas and his band Promise of the Real were a stunning country rock powerhouse, mixing trad country with the blues, and Lucas strikes a strong guitarist pose. No wonder Neil Young chose them to be his backing band on his last world tour. Jimmy Cliff. John Hayhurst. You can't have a sunny festival without reggae music, and after Marley there is really only Jimmy Cliff that can get your head nodding to that old school summer sound. Remarkably active at 70 years old, with a big smile that is as infectious as those songs such as Wonderful World, Beautiful People, or The Harder They Come. A beautiful version of Many Rivers to Cross, and I couldn't help but think, how on earth do UB40 follow that? The answer is they didn't. An extremely bland performance from them where the only highlight is some great saxophone from Brian Travers. UB40 John Hayhurst, even the stereo MCs blew UB40 off stage with Connected and Step It Up booming from the Songbird stage. It saw the first real dance session of the weekend, and Rob Birch is still a maestro of that early 90s synth sound. It is great to see him treading the boards again, and he did not stop pacing around the floor and climbing on the monitors. First big surprise of the festival, how much did we enjoy that Stereo MC's Rock Shot Saturday was all about the ladies. As part of a Cornbury Festival 2018 initiative, they announced an all-female fronted day, with every band or artist on the main two stages female-dominated. Some festivals talk about it, Cornbury just as it, and it was a refreshing change from the mostly lad bands booked for many other sites this year. Adelaide's John Hayhurst opening the Songbird stage were three girls called the Adelaides, fresh from attending the UK C2C festival. Their version of Jolene was a nice country pop twist to start the day. Similarly, across on the main stage 10 Millennia played some soothing soul pop to gently wake everyone up.